Now, because we're showing the textual representation of the date, if for example you wanted to go ahead and store a timestamp in a database table, you could use back-end functionality, say in PHP, to actually deal with converting this date to a timestamp. As far as I'm aware, the widget doesn't allow timestamps to be displayed, but it's always better to show this in here and submit this data and convert it in the back end of your application. So now that we've done that, we need to think about what happens if we want a minimum and a maximum date. Now at the moment we can go back for as long as possible, and obviously go forward for as far as possible. But let's say we wanted to only allow a date to be chosen from today onwards. Now we can do this using the min_date function, the min_date option. So min_date. Now we specify this as either as an integer, or we can specify inside text, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. For now I'm just going to say 0, and when we click here now you can see that we only are allowed to select the date from now onwards, so we can select today, tomorrow, and that will go ahead for the rest of time. So now that we've specified that, we can also go ahead and specify a max date. Now the max date might be easier to implement in textual form, however we can in fact say, for example, max date 3. Now that would allow us 3 days on top of the current date. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then we can't click any further because we've only allowed 3 dates. So this is extremely useful if you only want to allow specific dates, either from today or a few days back or a time period in the past, to a specific amount of dates onwards. Now we've supplied 3, and that is taking into account the actual days. We can also do a textual representation of this. So for example, we could say plus 1 month, and that would only allow 1 month onwards. So let's refresh. You can see we can go on here and we've got 1 month onwards from this particular date, so the 28th of this date to the 28th of next date, and we can then go ahead and also supply a particular amount of days, so maybe 2 days for example. So we use plus 1 month and plus 2 days will lead us to the 30th of August. So we're allowed to do this in textual representation as well as the min date as well. You could say, for example, minus 5 days. This would then do is allow you to go 5 days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days backwards as well. So with both these options you can specify either an integer, which represents the amount of days, or you can specify it in a textual form as well. Okay, so the next option we're going to look at, I'm just going to comma separate this and come down a bit so we can fit everything onto the text editor, is the show button panel. Now show button panel is default set to false, however we can go ahead and set this to true, and what this will do is this will show a panel at the bottom. So for example, selecting today and done. Now in this case, when we select a particular date, we automatically activate the done function in essence, and this will automatically close the date picker. However, if you implemented this in another way, you would in fact be able to use these buttons. So for example, if a date was selected, say the next day onwards, you could then press today and that would jump to the current date. So for example, if you were, I don't know, wanted to show, like I said, show the tomorrow as the default date, you could then press today to select the day, and then if you wanted the user to select these but not close the box, you'd be able to click done and that will just remove the box. It's useful to have it here anyway, just in case the user decides to say select the 29th and then say, oh, I don't want to select that anymore. They can either press done or they can click outside of the date picker area and that will close that date picker widget. Okay, so the last thing we're going to take a look at is the animation types. Now by default it is set to show. We're going to go ahead and specify show anim, so show animation, and there's lots of different options we can give this. They're all listed in the jQuery UI documentation. For example, we could choose bounce instead of the default show, and this will bounce in the box here, just depending on how animated you want the effect to look. For example, we could also choose fade in, and that would just fade in the date picker. Like I said, by default it is show, and when we refresh and click show, that will just pop out like that. If you wanted no animation whatsoever and you just wanted the date picker to appear, you can leave this blank here, and what that will do is it will just show it like this. Probably for more corporate or more important websites, I guess, however you want to describe them, the show option is a good idea because it just shows the date picker rather than including too much animation and making it look fake. So that's the date picker widget in the jQuery UI. As you can see, it's extremely easy to implement. By just using the default date picker widget on top of the form field that you want to show, you can easily implement this to attach to an input field.